Strobel.
A few years ago, a student shared with me after class his fears about the astronomy class, but he wasn't scared of the math and physics in the class. He was worried about getting lost in the immensity of the universe. Part of what got me hooked on astronomy from the time of junior high school was the immensity of the universe and all those places and things that are way, way beyond what we could possibly experience here on the earth. I got hooked on the awesomeness of it all and went on to get a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in astronomy. However, I can see where one could feel lost in this great big universe and think that an individual life doesn't really matter. I think that fear is at the root of many of our concerns and conflicts today. It's because modern science has kicked the feet of our special place out from under us. Coming from a family where the church plays a big part in our lives, and that church's teachings placed a great value on each individual life, with a special emphasis on compassion and social justice ministry. I answer my student, if you aren't a religious person but have a strong desire of compassion and justice work, how could you arrive at pretty much the same general place as my answer to my student? Before I answer that, let's take a quick tour through a history of the Copernican principle to see what could be so worrisome and its application in astronomy and biology. In the Copernican principle, we, you and I, are not in a specially favored position in the universe. This removal of our special place began in 1543 with Nicholas Copernicus, who put the sun at the center of the universe instead of the earth. Our home became just another planet orbiting the sun. In 1687, Isaac Newton showed how all the motions in space are the result of the universal force of gravity that works everywhere on the earth as well as anywhere in space. He unified the celestial and terrestrial physics and continued the process started by Nicholas Copernicus of removing the earth and, by extension, human beings from a unique position or situation in the universe. A little clicker, I guess, is going a little bit ahead there or something. Up to the mid-1910s, this is where we have it there, up to the mid-1910s, the sun still held the special position of being the center of the universe. Then Harlow Shapley showed that the sun is not at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The sun and we were relegated to a nondescript patch in the galaxy far from the center. If you shrunk our solar system down so that Pluto's orbit could fit in a quarter, the next star would be 80 meters away. That's from here to the lobby of the Student Services building next door. Pretty easy to overlook a quarter in something that size. Oops. There, that's what I want to show. The Milky Way, at this scale, would be the size of the western United States. So yeah, we wouldn't be able to see a quarter. It's something like that. In the 1920s, Edwin Hubble showed that the Milky Way galaxy is just one galaxy among many. Now we know that there are about 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. The Milky Way is off in some forgotten spot in the universe. Scientists are now toying with the idea of a multiverse. Our universe is just one of many, many universes. In the temporal realm, we're also pretty small. If you were to shrink the approximately 14 billion year history of the universe down into a single year of Carl Sagan's cosmic calendar, the Earth and the rest of the solar system don't form until September, and all the really interesting life forms don't come onto the scene until December. All of the past 10,000 years of human civilization would be in the last 23 seconds of that cosmic calendar year. Our entire lifetime would be less than a blink of an eye. In exoplanet research, we have found planets that could be even more habitable than the Earth because they orbit stars that are longer lived than the Sun. And the planets themselves are large enough to keep their climates stable for a longer time than the Earth can. With super habitable worlds, the Earth is not even the best place for life to exist. Think about that for a second. If our home planet isn't even a special home for life, what does that say about us? In the biology realm, the Copernican principle is seen when the early ideas of evolution that had humans as the end goal of evolution were replaced with us being just one twig at the end of one small branch of the big tree of life. My students' fear about getting lost in the universe is perfectly understandable. In our society, we live with the unease, even fear, that we don't matter in the grand scheme of things. It feels like the system we live in assumes that for the great majority of us. It feels like the system set up by the rich and powerful tells us that we ordinary folk don't matter. They'll extract as many resources from us while they possibly can, like there is no tomorrow. The message that the 99% of us don't really matter is fueling the anger behind our political campaigns today. People of various stripes feel like they're being left behind, and they're lashing out at the mainstream political system. So, how did I answer my students' fear about getting lost in the universe? Here's a little more background about me before I answer that. I grew up in a large family of 8 boys, where church played a significant part of our lives. I always had a strong interest in science and math, but there was no conflict between science and theology because my parents' theology was on the more open, more progressive side. 2 of my brothers are ordained clergy in the United Methodist Church, and another brother has a master's in systematic theology. 2 other brothers got degrees in the natural sciences, one in biology and the other in geology. In college, I struggled to make sense of how science and religion mesh. After years of trying to find some objective source or evidence or ironclad logical proof, I have found that it comes down to a matter of choice. We can either go the nihilistic route and get ours while the getting is good or possible, or choose to believe and act like a human life is significant, ours as well as others. In my faith background, there are a couple of passages from the Bible that show this tension between what the physical evidence tells us and the alternative choice. In Psalm 103, we find, because God knows how we're made, God remembers that we're just dust. The days of a human life are like grass. They bloom like a wildflower, but when the wind blows through it, it's gone. Not even the ground on which it stood remembers it. But in Psalm 8, we find, when I look up at your skies, at what your fingers made, the moon and stars that you set firmly in place, what are human beings that you think about them? What are human beings that you pay attention to them? Yet, you've made them only slightly less than divine, crowning them with glory and grandeur. I told my student that for me, I avoid getting lost with the belief described in Psalm 8. Although we are tiny in the cosmic sense and our existence is fleeting, we're still considered to be important. However, you don't need to go the religious route to arrive at pretty much the same place. If you make the materialistic assumption that the significance of something depends only on its size and how long it lasts, then we really don't matter. But if you make the choice of the alternative assumption, then some tiny things can still be immensely important, like the curl of your newborn child's fingers around your thumb. The brevity of some other things is what makes them important. It's all a matter of choice. If we assume that we really do matter, then we are faced with the choice of seeing ourselves as the center of the universe, an end unto ourselves, or to choose the more mature, more responsible path. We have to make the conscious choice of Dr. Seuss's Horton because there is nothing in the physical world that compels us to make that choice. The choice of being responsible for the well-being of others. And, by extension, the rest of creation. In 1990, the Voyager 1 spacecraft turned its camera inward from beyond the orbit of Pluto at about 3.7 billion miles away at the request of Carl Sagan. Looking back at the Earth from that great distance, the Earth is just one tiny bluish white speck, about 1/10 of a pixel in size. Carl Sagan used that image to underscore how tiny the Earth is and how insignificant it seems against the vastness of even our tiny solar system. But yet, that's our home. Sagan noted that that speck is still important and worth taking care of. He ended his reflection with, quote, "To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known." Now, that statement is not a scientific statement, but a belief statement. Whether it arises from a humanist perspective or a religious perspective, it is indeed a belief, a base level assumption from which our better decisions and actions flow. It is that belief that shapes how I interpret the data of what we've discovered from modern science about us and our place in the universe, and why it is a worthwhile effort to discover how the Earth works in order to protect the future of generations to come. Namaste.